Your Steve Jones Show podcast will start shortly. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Brewers Outlet, your beverage supermarket on Reagan Street in Sunbury.
A good friend, Gerry Dulac, joins us on the show. My friend, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Steve, thanks. Always good to be with you, and I hope you're doing well, my friend.
I'm doing very well. Oak Hill is about 5 miles from my son's house. So
there, perfect.
I know.
I'm surprised you're not there.
Yeah, I know. It was something I considered, but there's something with the Big Ten I'm doing next week. So I have to go to Indiana, so there's a lot of travel involved, and that's what entered into it. But when I look at the PGA, something I don't hear, and you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, when the U.S. Open is played, a recurring theme to me is always course setup, course setup, course setup. I never hear that about the PGA, and I haven't heard it about this place. Am I right or wrong about that?
No, you're right, and the reason why is Kerry Haigh. It's funny, I was just discussing that last night, Steve, on my weekly golf show. And you hear about it. You don't hear a lot about it at the Masters. You always hear about it at the U.S. Open. And the British Open, I think, they're very cognizant of the weather possibilities there. But the PGA, they go to some of the same venues where the U.S. Open has been. And even though the rough is up and it's thick, I mean, it's not unfair. It's just brutal. But the course setup is very fair, and you're right. But that's the reason why is Kerry Haigh. He's been setting up the PGA courses for years, and he does as good a job as anybody. The golfers will tell you the same thing, and it's true again this week, even though it is playing very difficult. The par fours the par fives are playing over par. Where do you see that on the PGA Tour? It's just difficult out there. And I think what's leading right now, Corey Connors just got to 6. I think right now 6 will win. I really don't think it's going to get any. I don't know that it's going to get any lower. I certainly would be shocked if it got to double digits. Right now, I tell you what, if somebody says, "Look, I'll take 6 at the end of the week," I'll run to the clubhouse and take it.
To me, a great story is the fact that they let PGA professionals, teaching professionals, qualify for it. Michael Block is at even par through 2 rounds at 140. And I thought he did a marvelous interview yesterday while playing with Scott Van Pelt. When you see a teaching professional like that doing this, because you're around teaching professionals all the time, Gerry, what do you think of that?
Well, first of all, I think it's very impressive. In his particular, just to be able to do that, to be able to make it is one thing. To be able to even find yourself on the leaderboard, making the cut and finding yourself on the leaderboard is a whole nother story. And the fact that he is where he is, I think he's probably still in the top 10, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, he's hunting right around that top 10. And, the guy's 46. It's not like he's a young buck, but by the same token, I think this is his 5th PGA, if I'm not mistaken. So he has some experience there. And, you have to have the right attitude. All those guys are going to be nervous, and when they're playing nervous, the club professionals, it's probably going to show in their play. But, listening to him, listening to his approach, he figures, hey, this might be the last time I'm here. He's not going in it to win it, but he's just going out there to play well and enjoy himself. And so I think he has the right attitude. And the fact that, like I said, he's an older guy, a tour player who's 46, for the most part isn't given much of a chance to contend anymore, and yet there he is. Now, do I expect him to be around on the weekend? No, but the mere fact that he is there right now, I think, just shows you the quality of a player that he is at his level to be able to go in to a major championship and play as well as he has.
If we had had this discussion Monday or Tuesday and we started talking about contenders, you would have mentioned several, but one of them you would have mentioned is Scottie Scheffler, who is right there in the thick of it right now. When you watch him play, what are the ingredients that allow him to be terrific, and not only that, terrific on difficult courses?
Well, a couple things. I will tell you, I really went out on a limb. He was my pre-tournament pick. But the reason why is he is just always there. He is so good in so many different facets, and that's the strength of his game. He is good at everything he does. He has a wonderful demeanor out there as well. You know, he's always calm. Look, I know he's churning inside. I'm sure he's nervous and grinding, but you don't see him get upset. You don't see him. You get the kind of the soft fist pump. You know, the clench of the fist, and but he doesn't have a weakness. I think his worst finish this year, Steve, is tied for 12th. He is always there. He is always playing well, and especially in the big events. And that's why I thought, John Rahm won the Masters. I thought Scotty Scheffler's going to win the PGA. I'll be surprised if he doesn't. Corey Connors, he's a guy, I'm not going to sit there and say I'm not surprised he's leading. Again, it's only 36 holes, and he still has to finish. But, he's a guy who is very accurate off the tee, and that's what you need here. I saw a stat yesterday that since in the last 2 years, I think he leads the entire tour in strokes gained overall. And he's a really solid player. I love his swing. I love his rhythm and his tempo. And, he'll hang around. I don't see him shooting himself out of the event. I'm not surprised with the way the golf course is playing that he's up there near the top of the leaderboard.
Has not had a bogey on today's round, which has really bolstered his case at the top of the leaderboard. But it should be pointed out, because he started on the back nine, he still hasn't played 6 yet, and 6 is one of the toughest holes in championship golf.
We're talking about Scotty Scheffler to show you not only how consistently good he is week in and week out. He didn't make a bogey, until a couple holes ago. Granted, It's only the second round. But, he was the last player to not make a bogey. And when I look at major championships and when I am there, Steve, one of the things that when I start looking at who's going to be there on the final day or on the weekend, I see who's making the fewest bogeys. And that's usually a good indicator who's going to be near the top or challenging on Sunday. You stay away from the big numbers. And when you're making few bogeys in a major championship, that usually is going to bode well for you. And there's Scotty Scheffler being the last player to make a bogey after however many holes it was for him in the second round.
I think no surprise, because now it's the second major of the year. Less LIV talk this time, more golf talk. But Bryson DeChambeau is the one that is carrying that flag at the moment. Now, he started out the day at 4 under. He's now 1 under for the tournament. Is it interesting to suddenly feel like you're catching up with these guys, because they may be playing in LIV, but they're almost in the witness protection program as they do it?
And you're right, Steve, and I think that's what makes their appearance in the major all the more noteworthy. Not that they're back in the spotlight, but I think you have – look, when you tune in to watch a major, you want the best players in the world. You don't care where they're playing. You want the best players. You go back to the old days, when Faldo was playing in Europe and Lee Westwood was playing in Europe and Seve was playing in Europe. But when they got to a major, boy, look out for those guys. They weren't playing the PGA Tour the way international players play it now. The DP World Tour is all but dead because all those British players are playing over in the U.S. Tour because of the money being offered. But that wasn't the case years ago. So it didn't matter where you played. It's just when you got to the majors, you wanted the best players. And you want Dustin Johnson, and you want Brooks Koepka, and you want Bryson DeChambeau, even though he has not played well this year. I think his 66 yesterday was a little bit of an aberration. Mm-hmm. I didn't expect him to stay there. Did I want to see him stay there? Yeah. I said this at the Masters. I was hoping one of the LIV players would be in contention, even if they won, especially on Sunday at Augusta, and here 3 of the top 6 were LIV players. And I felt the same way when DeChambeau got off to a good start, only because I think the people, and I think they're starting to, I think the Masters helped this, Steve. I think it made people understand that, okay, yeah, you don't have to like that tour. You can call those players traitors or whatever you want to call them. But when you're talking about the best players in the world, you want them in a major tournament, no matter where they are playing, and that goes, and that holds true whether it's Dustin Johnson or Bryson DeChambeau or Brooks Koepka or Joaquin Niemann or Cam Smith. You want the best players in the world in a major, and so I think a lot of that acrimony that exists between the two tours, I think it's quieted down now. The Masters started it, and I think this helps it some more.
Yeah, I agree. And you and I go back to when the AFL was in existence. And yes, Joe Namath and the Jets were able to beat the Colts, but now you felt when they merged, they finally had all the best players playing against one another. And, Gerry, you and I both know that's the only thing the fan cares about. They don't care about the politics of it.
Yeah, the disservice that is going on here is to the fans if this, not right now because those players are still qualified, but if they don't get those world ranking points, and some of those guys start to slip through the cracks because they're not otherwise qualified. Now, with the Stars, it's still going to take a couple years because they have exemptions into the majors through other areas as past champions and past major champions. Right. But eventually, if this continues for a couple more years and there are no world ranking points, that's what's going to happen. And the people who are going to, quote, pay the most for it are the fans who aren't going to see those players. And you're right, they don't care. Oh, they probably have opinions about this tour or that tour, what the PGA Tour is doing, what the LIV Tour represents. But, yeah, they want to see the best players in the world. And, when I go backward, it's just over a year. Well, it's about a year that this all started to unfold. I don't know what Jay Monahan was supposed to do at the time, Steve, but whatever it was that he could have done or was supposed to do, I think he's mishandled the whole situation.
I agree.
And his reaction to LIV, to just increase the purses, let the rich get richer, almost divide the PGA Tour, effectively crush the DP World Tour, the European Tour, because those players are now jumping over here, the top players, to play in America on the PGA Tour, and then to banish those players to, lifetime suspensions, which won't hold up in a court of law eventually. But that's where he mishandled it. I thought he could have avoided that. But from the very beginning, it's been mishandled. Again, I don't know what he was supposed to do initially, but I think the whole thing has been mishandled, and it's too bad for golf.
I think one of the worst things that you can do in any, quote, crisis, and for golf, I'm sure from his point of view is a crisis, is panic. And right. I think, in my opinion, he panicked, and panic usually leads to bad solutions. That's just me.
Yeah, there's no question, Steve. He overreacted. And even by coming up with these elevated events, and now you're asking the sponsors to double their contributions to the tour. And in the process, you're honking off the other sponsors who aren't getting elevated events, and now their tournament where they stuck around for years and years and years, now they're getting a Korn Ferry Tour field because the elevated events are attracting the top players, and the top players, aren't, for the most part, 95% of them aren't going to play in these non-designated events. So you're causing this acrimony with the very people who have supported you, and so there's a lot of downside to all this. The upside, of course, is the money the players are playing for. But at some point, the sponsor is going to say, "Hey, that's enough. We've paid a lot of money. We've paid a lot of money for years. Now you want me to double my support, and then maybe in another year or two, I'm going to be a non-designated event." I think they're just asking for trouble.
No, you're playing with fire when you do that, and you're playing with loyalty. Don't play with loyalty.
Right.
It has to be a two-way street. I thought it was interesting that Rory McIlroy bypassed all this. And I'm wondering, because I've only talked to him a few times. You've talked to him exponentially more than I ever have. I'm wondering if he looked around and said, you know what, I need to just concentrate on my game. I can't keep going out there every week and getting distracted by this.
I don't think there's any question about it. Rory, and to his credit, has, accepted, taken on the role of the spokesperson for golf, not just the tour, but for golf in general. Yep. And I applaud him for that. But, I mean, there comes a time when, Nick Faldo wasn't going to be that. Tiger wasn't going to be that. You're talking about the greatest players. Jack in his later day, yeah. But when you're playing, I think Rory gets a little too caught up in that. I mean, only because he's trying to be gracious. He feels you don't have to be the way Faldo was when he played. You didn't have to be the way Ben Hogan was when he played. You can still be accommodating and nice and still be a great player, and he has actually proved that. But while he has slumped in these majors, I think he has to change his approach. And when he was at Augusta and he did a live interview there, with the CBS people, I was shocked because, he's trying, so much pressure is on him, so much attention is on him to win that Masters and to complete the Grand Slam. And to do an interview during the tournament while you're playing, it just shocked me because, to me, that's what he has to shut out and focus on what he's doing and tune out the outside noise.
Well said. Gerry, always a pleasure. Always enjoy this. Anytime I spend with you, I enjoy. Thank you so much, my friend.
Well, Steve, you are welcome, and it's always good chatting with you, and I'll look forward to our next conversation.